California had issued 62,000 CDLs, drivers who entered illegally, John, or do not have a permanent legal status as required by the feds. California sanctuary laws prohibit asking applicants their immigration status. Governor Newsom said there's not a problem. Back to you.
Did I hear you right? Did you say 62,000?
That's correct.
Oh, my goodness.
It's a federal audit.
William Legionnaires for us. William, thank you so much. Let's bring in the acting ICE director, Todd Lyons. I was really taken aback with what William just said, that California gave out 62,000 CDL licenses. What do you make of that?
So a few different times now we have discussed the recurring issue of foreign migrant truck drivers in the United States, and we have a key update on that today. But most often, for context, we are talking about people who are usually illegal aliens. Sometimes they're of refugee, asylum seeker, or temporary migrant status, but the end outcome is the same. We have a bunch of people in this country who cannot speak English. They very often are coming from third world countries that either have different traffic laws than the United States, but more commonly no traffic laws. And in some twisted form of liberal insanity, a bunch of sanctuary states thought it was a good idea to give out a bunch of commercial driver's licenses, CDLs, to these Biden-era illegal aliens to operate big rig trucks on American highways. And the end outcome has been basically as you would expect. In fact, we've already seen two high-profile cases this year where Biden-era illegal aliens, both of which were from India, caused notable crashes, deadly crashes on American highways. One was in Florida, where that Harjinder Singh guy basically tried to make an illegal U-turn in the middle of the interstate on an official use-only median, right? The police are allowed to use it, state workers. He doesn't even read English. He doesn't know what that means. He tries to make a U-turn. The trailer gets stuck. Someone slams in. 3 Americans are dead. Or more recently, we saw another one in Southern California where, traffic was coming to a slowdown. This guy in a big rig truck is not paying attention, allegedly who he was on drugs, doesn't even hit the brakes, slams through 3 cars, kills 3 people, 8 cars in total involved in the pileup. And the commonality there is not just that they're illegal aliens, but both of those cases had CDLs that were issued by, guess what? Gavin Newsom in the state of California. Why is that significant besides the fact they're simply a liberal state? Well, you may also know that earlier this year, the Trump administration already tried to implement reforms even before we saw these crashes to crack down on this problem. One major thing was the DOT tried to put out a mandate that all CDLs have to have English proficiency. You have to be able to read the road signs if you're going to drive on American roads, especially in a big rig truck where you got to do the way stations and all that. Number one, and more recently, of course, they put in a requirement that only U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents can have CDLs. No more migrants, no more refugees, no more illegal aliens. And according to Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, California repeatedly has refused to comply with these federal regulations. Well, in an update today, as Harjinder Singh gets a major thing being handed down to him in court, and as we recently, of course, last month again saw that crash in Ontario, California, finally, according to the state government of California, they are caving into the pressure that Sean Duffy and the Trump administration has put on them. They are now revoking thousands of the CDLs for illegal aliens. And we'll tell you about this battle here today. But first, a word from today's sponsors. We all live in a busy world where it's hard to keep up with everything. That's why I present you the Plod Note Pro, which is a real game changer, whether you're a leader, working professional who wants to stay organized in face-to-face conversations, or an aspiring professional aiming to use the same tools as top leaders. Plod Note Pro is your answer. Plod Note Pro is more than just a recorder. It's basically a personal secretary in your pocket. So imagine walking into a discussion or in-person meeting and you set this slim credit card-sized gadget down and it picks up everything. But it doesn't stop at audio recording. You can also take pictures, type down thoughts, mark key points so that everything from a meeting is captured, synthesized, and understood for you by AI. Then comes the best part. The Plod app takes all of that. You don't just get a transcript, you get a highlighted summary, insights that actually help with decisions, and a to-do list for everyone involved. All done for you by AI. It even has a built-in chat GPT-like assistant called Ask Plod. Think of it like your second brain. After a class or a meeting or a discussion, Plod can automatically draft stakeholder emails, extract data reports, or help you brainstorm next steps. So, guys, whatever you do for a living, if you want to stop worrying about missing details, check out the Plod Note Pro. Of course, I shouldn't have to say it, but always use the Plod Note Pro responsibly. Don't go recording people without their consent, being creepy, and especially do not conduct illegal espionage with this product, but be sure to go check out the Plod Note Pro. Okay, and with that said, let's get into this, but let us begin by pointing out for you the repeated comments, accusations, threats that Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has been rightly making against Gavin Newsom's government, and then we'll show you what apparently Newsom's government's doing in response. So take a listen. Again, this is where we've been thus far.
Just to show our viewers what Newsom is saying in response to this, and we can put up the statement, they said they do follow the English proficiency tests as a condition for receiving a CDL. They said they sent DOT a letter about it. So they said English, language proficiency is a requirement. So they're saying they're complying.
Yeah. Right. So Laura, they've given specific direction to their law enforcement officers to not enforce this rule. So if a California State Patrol pulls over a truck and the individual can't speak English, they should put that vehicle out of service, which costs the owner a lot of money to get it back into service. California said, listen, don't worry about that. Send them on their way. Don't even test them to make sure they can speak English when you interact with them. So no, Gavin's not complying. He's thumbing his nose, so the letter means nothing. What's happening on the ground in California is what we'll consider.
Oh, well, first of all, you mean to tell me that California has a rule, law, or regulation on the books for the sake of optics, but they're not actually enforcing it? Sounds awfully familiar. In fact, that sounds exactly like Proposition 36, which we brought up before, was the anti-crime ballot amendment that 70% of the state, in a liberal state, voted for, because it turns out even they were so tired of the smash and grabbing and the general police policy that crime is good, we support the criminals, and that's all okay. So that was passed in a Democratic vote, in a legally binding ballot amendment, and Gavin Newsom and the California state legislature have responded by refusing to actually fund it, right? So the state of democracy, oh, look, we just did Prop 50, that was democracy. They have so much democracy in California that when the people vote for something, but Gavin Newsom personally disagrees with it because he loves the criminals, despite whatever he wants to say about it, that they will just actively strike that down. So same situation going on here with the CDLs and English requirements. Yeah, color me so surprised, but ladies and gentlemen, there is still more to the story.
Gavin Newsom has thumbed his nose at us. He's refused to comply with the rules that have come from DOT, which is stop issuing these licenses, number one. And number two, go back and review all the licenses that you have issued and make sure it's been done legally. Gavin Newsom has said no. So one, I'm about to pull $160 million from California. And as we pull more money, we also have the option of pulling California's ability to issue commercial driver's licenses. Gavin Newsom cares more about illegals getting commercial driver's licenses than he does the citizens of his own state and the safety of Americans. It's shameful. He's been lying about what he's been doing. And again, we're gonna fight tooth and nail under President Trump's administration to make sure that we hold states like California accountable.
$160 million will be pulled from the state of California. And that's just tranche one. That's only 4% of the money that they get from us. We'll go on to another 4% after that and another 4% after that even. But if it doesn't get rectified by the state of California and other huge violators, other states, we're going to pull their ability to actually issue a CDL. You can't issue a commercial driver's license any longer. We're going to go after the schools that don't test these drivers to make sure they're proficiently equipped to operate these big rigs on our roads. We're going to go after them. We're going to go after every link in the chain that's allowing this to happen because, I mean, you play these clips on your show, Will. It is horrific. You have a mom and dad out with their kids on a Sunday afternoon, and they're getting rear-ended by a semi-driver who's not paying attention. You have a guy driving a semi without pants on. The stories are, I think, would shock the conscience of most Americans. These people should never be on American roads.
Right. So again, that's what's been said thus far. Now, I know it is sometimes a meme. Even among Trump supporters, it gets mocked, right? This whole idea that, oh, Trump's threatening to cut the funding, but nothing's actually going to happen. But I'm here to report to you that at least in this case, something 100% did happen, right? Clearly, whatever it was, whether it was the pressure from the federal government, Florida, a combination of those two, finally, months after these regulations were mandated nationally, you see California at least beginning to apply with all of it, because according to Fox News here, California is now finally revoking CDLs that were issued to at least 17,000 immigrants after pressure from the Trump administration. Notice how Gavin Newsom's not really saying a lot of this publicly. You'll find out why in a second. But the licenses are expected to be revoked. They would have expired after the driver was legally allowed to be in the country. And here's what Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said in a statement, quote, "After weeks of claiming they did nothing wrong," and if you watch our prior videos, you would know that's exactly what they did, right? They even tried to say, oh, we never issued the CDL, or we followed all the federal regulations. Now they're suddenly admitting they weren't following federal regulations, which is hence why they're now revoking CDLs that they weren't doing before. Yeah, very interesting, right? But after weeks of claiming they did nothing wrong, Gavin Newsom and California have been caught red-handed. Now that we've exposed their lies, 17,000 allegedly illegally issued trucking licenses are being revoked. According to Sean Duffy, quote, "This is just the tip of the iceberg. My team will continue to force California to prove they have removed every illegal alien from the wheel of semi-trucks and school buses," which, by the way, is worth noting as well. We're not just talking here, guys, about big rig trucks. We're talking, they also give CDLs out for school buses. So imagine that, right? Kids going to school, and you got a Harjinder Singh type freaking driving the school bus. I mean, that's insane, right? And yet this is the party that, every time there's a school shooting, they claim, oh, Republicans don't care about the children because we disagree on gun policy and they don't even want to arm the schools. But of course, this is also the party who's like, oh yeah, Harjinder Singh, a perfect candidate to drive your children to school. Just utterly ridiculous. But you're racist, right? As they said even back then when he mandated English proficiency. It's racist, you're demonizing immigrants. Oh, how about we just don't want to die? Huh? Is that a valid concern? Oh, you're hateful bigot conspiracy theorists. People aren't being killed by illegals on the road. They literally are, though. And it's actually insane to me, but very telling, very typical, right? That it took that to happen and become two separate national news stories for Gavin Newsom to finally say, oh yeah, maybe people who can't speak English and don't know traffic laws shouldn't be given commercial trucks. I mean, it's not even really an immigration conversation. There's certainly one to be had there, but it's also just a common sense thing, okay? If someone is a native-born citizen and for whatever reason can't speak English and can't drive, yeah, they shouldn't be given a CDL either, right? It's almost like DEI to a degree. Oh, you can't speak English? Yeah, here, take a job where you have to speak English. It's like, anyways, the Transportation Department said those impacted by the decision have been notified that their licenses no longer meet federal requirements and will expire in 60 days. They should expire right now. I don't even care if they're on an active trip, right? Because you might save a life doing that. I don't know why it's 60 days, honestly, but okay, fine, fair enough, right? However, Gavin Newsom's office said in an X post that the federal requirements referenced were not in effect when the licenses were issued. This is probably true, but again, why are you revoking them now? You didn't revoke them before, right? So that's why they're just lying about this. Because you had several months where DOT kept on saying, you're not following federal regulation. California said, yes, we are. And now suddenly, months later, you're revoking illegal alien CDLs, like we were asking you to for months. But you said you already did that, right? In a scathing social media post, Gavin Newsom slammed Sean Duffy over, what he deemed to be a lie. The first point that Newsom's office pushed back on was the department's assertion that the California DMV, quote, admitted to illegally issuing the 17,000 CDLs in question. Newsom's office claimed that the licenses were withdrawn because they were inconsistent with California law. Well, clearly you've done such a great job enforcing that thus far. Okay, why were they issued to begin with if they were inconsistent with California law? Gavin Newsom, right? So I mean, it's almost as if you're not enforcing the laws of your own state. Yeah, I'm sure decades ago, some common sense Democrat or even a Republican governor from back in the day probably did say, yeah, you can't be an illegal alien driving or you have to speak English or something. That wouldn't surprise me, but you're not enforcing it. As usual, this is what Democrats do. They say nobody's above the law, but they selectively enforce the law. Anyways, Newsom's office also rejected the department's statement that the drivers who received licenses were illegal immigrants, saying they were in the U.S. Legally and, quote, had been granted work authorization by the federal government. Yeah, the federal government under whose administration, first of all? You mean to tell me it was Biden in many cases? Yeah, exactly. Number one. Number two, though, again, guys, this is a loophole they keep weaponizing, but what is the new Trump regulation? It doesn't matter if you have legal status. If you're a foreign exchange student, you have a temporary refugee claim, case pending, whatever, right? The new regulation is that you have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent legal resident to have a CDL, okay? So just because they have work authorization from the federal government, correctly issued or not, now no longer qualifies them for a CDL. That's the whole point. Because the Trump administration actually wrote this law extremely well. They didn't just say no illegal aliens, because there's a lot of loophole garbage in our immigration system that has been weaponized in the past to say, oh, you're here illegally, but as your immigration deportation case is pending, here's a temporary work authorization. Or you're an asylum seeker, right? As we saw basically Biden do to allow all those people into our country, et cetera, et cetera. That's why they have the new rule. So you using the excuse of work authorization is actually untrue. It's misleading to people because it sounds like they have legal status to be driving on the roads, but again, they do not. Anyways, additionally, Newsom's office disputed the claim that the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration analysis showed that, quote, more than 1 in 4 of the non-domiciled CDL records sampled in California failed to comply with federal regulations. Oh, big surprise. Yeah, California's not following federal regulations. You don't say. Wow. But the governor's office claimed that this analysis was based on retroactive application of its new rules, and that it also faults California for following guidance explicitly approved by DHS, aka the Biden administration. Okay, even if that's true, Gavin, it doesn't change the fact that you spent months not complying with federal regulations. Okay, so Duffy hit back saying, we've said all along, DOT is reprimanding California for violating the original rules. So that's what Duffy's actually pointing out, right? Original rules have always been you can't give out these CDLs to illegals, at least according to him. I'm not an expert on trucking regulations, but, it wouldn't surprise me, right? But, as we know, right? The Biden administration just decided to ignore a bunch of federal laws. But when Trump does it, the courts strike it down. You can't deport people. You have to do this or that, right? We never saw a court, by the way, step in and say, hey, Biden, you're mandated to enforce immigration law. You can't just let 10 million people come over the border, right? You're actually violating this, and that by catching and releasing or giving out work authorization to these people. But they didn't care. They didn't care, right? Anyways, my emergency rule came as a consequence, in part, for California's total disregard of those federal laws. It was that bad, Duffy added. Now, it's also worth noting here that California's move to revoke the licenses came just one day before Harjinder Singh, who crossed into the United States illegally in 2018 and is, by the way, given legal authorization by the Biden administration, right, work authorization there, and is accused of causing a fatal accident that left 3 people dead. He faced a docket call as the court reviews discovery issues and interpreter concerns. So in other words, this case is now moving along, right? Now, Singh was charged with 3 counts of vehicular homicide after he allegedly attempted to make an illegal U-turn on that official use only access point in Fort Pierce, as we covered before. But just days after the accident, officials said that the wreck, that Singh failed English road sign test. Now, I'm bringing this part up as well because it is worth noting that the Florida Attorney General, James Uthmeier, has also had some choice words for Gavin Newsom as of late. So take a listen to that as well.
So a lot of Americans are upset about this because although California is a sanctuary state, the policies that they are passing affect us all. Tell us about what you guys are doing in Florida to push back against this.
Sure. Well, first, we're going to prosecute this guy in court to the fullest. He's looking at many decades behind bars before he would ultimately get deported. And here's the thing. Our investigation shows he failed his CDL license exam 10 times in the 2 months before this tragedy took place. We are investigating criminally and civilly not only the license company that wrongfully gave him this license. He cannot speak English, but we're also suing California and Gavin Newsom in the United States Supreme Court. Because we can do everything right here in Florida. We're a law and order state. It's illegal to give any license to illegal aliens. But when California engages in this unlawful behavior, we are harmed. We suffer. So we're going to hold them accountable in court.
You know, my father is a truck driver, and apparently this issue is pervasive in the field. This is what the Secretary of Transportation had to say. The California governor and his state were caught red-handed after weeks of claiming they did nothing wrong. Now we've exposed their lies. 17,000 illegally issued trucking licenses are being revoked. So you're getting some backup from the federal government.
We're happy to have their support. We stand by them. I think what California is doing is wrong, and we're going to hold them accountable.
And again here, guys, multiple federal law enforcement sources told Fox News that Singh was first encountered by Border Patrol agents in California's El Centro sector in March 2022 in Gavin Newsom's state. Under Biden's administration, they found this guy, and instead of deporting him, was released into the interior of the country pending an immigration hearing. My understanding, by the way, I think he did even get the deportation order and just ignored it and was working with the CDL, which millions of people were allowed to essentially do under Biden. And so to make a long story short, as you just heard there from the Florida AG, what's happening for Gavin Newsom is that his failure to comply with this law, there was too much pressure essentially mounting, right? You got Sean Duffy making all these threats to withhold funding and even withhold the ability of California as a state to even issue CDLs because they refuse to follow federal regulations. And then secondly, and I hope this still happens, by the way, and it still succeeds, the state of Florida is suing the state of California and trying to take that to the Supreme Court for their failure to enforce federal regulations. Because after all, you know, it's not just an issue bounded to California because commercial truck drivers drive all over the country, okay? Because of the Interstate Commerce Pact and the Constitution, technically a California license is valid in Florida and you don't have border agents checking everywhere. That's how federalism works. And that's fine if everyone's following the same rules. But of course, California is not, right? They're ignoring federal regulation. They're basically acting as like a rogue secessionist country. But Florida is still legally mandated to respect that license. And then they come here and crash and kill people. It's insane, right? So again, long story short, I think Newsom understood that, oh, shoot, I'm getting sued on like many different fronts. I'm getting exposed for this. I let too many people die and too many people are noticing. So now finally he's like, okay, I'll, comply with federal law. It's just so utterly frustrating to witness. This should have never happened. Okay. And I think that goes without saying. And this guy, even in his perp walk, even in his mugshot, his court, appearances, just seems totally unremorseful, just a complete scumbag of a human being. And yeah. Here's hoping that's the end of it, right? These people shouldn't be on the road to begin with. But with that said, guys, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.